everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the second last set to release in Pokemon as of February, which is Surging Sparks. And this set, I'm going to be going over the top 10 most expensive cards in the set. And I'm going to be giving my take on each of the cards, and particularly whether they are worthy of being in your binder, whether there are better options out there, what the history is behind some of the Pokemon, and so forth. So without further ado, let's get into it. For number 10, we have the Ceruledge Art Rare number 197 out of 191. This is a Pokemon that was introduced during the Scarlet and Violet era. A lot of people are not huge fans of the Pokemon that were released during this era, but of the ones that were designed, this is among the favorites for this generation. Additionally, for art rares, the ceiling has been much higher. The bar has been raised, with the Magikarp being over $200, Eevee and Groudon crossing the $100 threshold. We have a higher ceiling for art rares in general. This Ceruledge being $35 is, in my opinion, a fair valuation, particularly given the fact that recently in Prismatic Evolutions, we have a SAR counterpart to this card, or this Pokemon. Again, this one is a terrestrial version, so we have the rainbow border. That is obviously missing in the previous card. In fact, that's honestly a positive for a lot of people because they don't like the hat and helmet on the Pokemon. That's just seen as a bit of a annoying addition for some people. I don't mind it depending on how it's executed. For this Ceruledge in particular, I don't mind it too much. But if we see the price, and over the past month, this is the drop from pre-release price. So ignoring this is sort of the debut price down here. For Ceruledge, and it's been climbing since then, going up to 175. As an alternative to this card, the Ceruledge from Surging Sparks provides a much fairer valuation, an easier buy for a lot of people, plus you have a cleaner image of Ceruledge itself. So it's a great option. It's a great addition to your collection. For number 9, we have Jasmine's Gaze. This is a trainer that was introduced during Generation 2, the Olivine gym leader. She specializes in steel types, and right now we're seeing her in a cafe eating a sandwich, surrounded by tons of pastries and desserts. I think there's even a cute little alchemy designed whipped cream on top of this cake, which is kind of cute and fun. Fair. I don't think this is a good investment as a SAR trainer because, firstly, trainers in Pokemon cards tend to be more valuable in Japanese compared to English. That's just the way it is. Particularly, trainers have also had a big drop in valuation and sort of a die down in popularity compared to how it was at the beginning of Scarlet and Violet. A lot of trainer SARs were going to the moon. Now, I do think Jasmine's Gaze is a great card, but the reason I'm saying this is not the best option as an investment is because of two separate cards I'll show in just a moment. Here, to begin, we have Miriam from Scarlet and Violet base set. This was the first ever trainer SAR introduced in Pokemon, and this is a great artwork. In person, the pink is very vibrant and it has a completely different art style. It's a unique sort of card. If you're looking for a trainer, in my personal opinion, this is a better option, not only because of its historical positioning, but also because of its perception as a trainer. Miriam is very popular from Scarlet and Violet. I've found Jasmine cards to not have as much popularity in the past, particularly as well. If we're taking a look at trajectory, we're seeing that over the past year it's had a sort of lull in value, and then it's jumped up again. But this is not even close to where it was at the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, where it was going for $100 and well above in pre-release, and then dropped down to around $80, then $60. Now we're seeing $33. So it's still very undervalued for what it is. Secondly, there's also the Iono, another card that was going for well above $100, the second set of the Scarlet and Violet era. Iono is again a very vibrant card, a very loved trainer from the Scarlet and Violet era. She is the streamer who is almost a mentor to Dot, one of the three main characters from Pokemon Horizon. She also is surrounded by tons of amazing desserts, just like the Jasmine card, but so much more vibrant. We have a Pikachu styled whipped cream on top, and what I can only imagine is a Eevee milkshake or maybe a ice cream float, whatever it is. But very colorful card. And then we also have a cheeky Rotom phone, which is kind of penetrating the edge of the card, which is not always common for SAR or alternate art cards, which is a little fun addition. It kind of adds a three-dimensional effect to it. And if we're taking a look at price, it's going for $65. I think both the Iono and the Miriam are better options compared to Jasmine. I'm not saying this is not a great artwork, but there are other options that you should consider. Number 8, we have Latios from Surging Sparks, the most expensive artwork in this set currently. I think this card is fantastic, and there are 2 reasons why. Firstly, it is Latios. It is a very, very popular Pokemon. It has a connected artwork, in this case, to the Latias SAR that is also from Surging Sparks. And together they form a fantastic artwork that gives you a bigger horizon of the setting and also a connected artwork to an iconic duo. For the second reason, it's actually because of some historical context. If we take a look at Team Up from Sun and Moon, we had a single card that was featuring Latias and Latios. The tag team cards would have 2 Pokemon together, and they would have this sort of yellow border edges, and then 2 Pokemon featured in it. This is an alternate art. There was also a regular full art and so forth, but this card was so loved. It's the number 1 card of the Sun and Moon era, and it goes for $1,180. This is an iconic scene from that movie I was mentioning earlier, where you have the Latias and Latios sort of holding their little arms together, touching their heads together, and it's a very sad moment between a brother and sister, and it's got so much emotion tied behind it. For this iconic duo to make re-emergence in Scarlet and Violet, which was not the case in Sword and Shield, we did not get a Latias or Latios in a substantial way. So here we got it again, and in the iconic sort of mechanism they've used for artworks in Scarlet and Violet, which is story modes, which have not really been visited as strongly in any past generation. This is no doubt one of the best cards from this set. Next up we have Lisia's Appeal, and this is another trainer that I did not mention when I was talking about alternatives to Jasmine, but it certainly is because I wanted to wait until we got here. Lisia's Appeal is a card that's featuring an iconic trainer who was introduced during the Sun and Moon era in terms of in the trading card game, but also in the show during Journey Together as a contestant against Serena. And so as a contestant in that episode where Serena actually returned after a few years, that also gives Lisia a little bit more exposure. But also, when I was talking about it entering in the Sun and Moon era, this is a card. It came out as a full art trainer in Celestial Storm, and it goes for $290. This is an absurdly high price tag, and I think that this Lisia's Appeal is a far better card. Not only because we get the Mega Stone, which she uses to evolve her Altaria, but there's also a Pokemon in the background, which is fantastic. SAR, better texture, better perspective, much more personality driven artwork. So this is definitely a great choice for your collection. Next up we have Alolan Exeggutor. This is another Terrestrial card. This is what I meant by sometimes not caring about the crown and sometimes caring. In this case I genuinely don't care that the crown is there. It's barely even visible, and the fact is the sort of crystallized body to Exeggutor doesn't too annoyingly clash with the watercolor background. But this also has a connected artwork to it, which is this Execute. I suppose what's happened here is this Execute evolved and then it terrestrialized, perhaps. Maybe a den showed up or something and it just terrestrialized out of the blue, and now it's just super happy dancing around on the same court with the same palm trees. In the Execute card we can see the shadow of the same palm trees, so this is pretty interesting storyline again, or connected artwork if you want to call it that. It goes for $61. This is honestly a personal choice with this card. For some this might hit a home run, and some they've said this is their favorite card in the set. For me it's not as much. I don't necessarily have anything against this card, but it's not my favorite even with the connected artwork. It does give it a bit of a boost, the fact that it has this watercolor theme painting, which is a little bit different. I really enjoy collecting different styles of artworks. So for instance the Braviary from this set as well, it has a more Van Gogh-esque background, whereas the Skarmory has almost a photorealistic, and here we have watercolor. So there's a lot of interesting mediums used in the Surging Sparks era, which I find interesting and not something a lot of people talk about. So that's another bonus added to this Exeggutor as well. Really, this is up to you guys. I think this is a great card. $61 is about right for this card. I don't see how it should deserve a higher price tag when there's many other options I will show moving forward in this set that really do outshine it. This is the next one. We have Hydreigon EX. This is again another stellar artwork. We have the crown, and this one's a bit annoying to me. I don't like the crown as much, and this is kind of covering Hydreigon. It's a little bit too occupying in the art. I would have preferred to see Hydreigon in its full glory, especially as it seems to be coming out of some sort of galactic rift, which I have no idea what the context is behind this. Hydreigon's also a very popular dragon-type Pokemon. It shows up a lot in the show, from a shiny variation that shows up in the Zekrom and Victini, or Reshiram and Victini. There are two versions to that movie. It shows up in that, shows up as a sort of Pokemon that Iris has to tame in Black and White era, and it's a moment where she gains the respect of her mentor. There's a lot of backstory, I suppose, that you can find for Hydreigon during Black and White, which is the era it was introduced. Afterwards, it doesn't show up as much, but it is one of the more ferocious and strong dragon types that they've shown off in Pokemon in general. $82, I say this is again a decent price. This is not too bad for Hydreigon. Particularly as it has dropped off a decent amount since its initial debut. It was going for, this is a bit of a pre-release time, so I don't want to talk too much about this price, but when it jumped up to 110, I was thinking that it was a little overvalued. It's dropped back down to 82. If we take a look at recent sales, actually, we see that it's sort of plateauing, sort of flatlining at this $82 range. But if we take a look at listings, which is a bit of an issue here, of the 5 listings, they're all going for dramatically higher valuations, some completely ridiculous and making no sense. 142 and 153. This is a bit of a suspect listing, to be honest, for me. These two are reasonable, showing that it could be that these cards have the potential to move forward. Again, 107 is a little bit too high for reasonable pricing. But anyway, I think this is a fair value for this card. Next up, we have the Pikachu EX from Surging Sparks, the gold card. I think this is overvalued, and I'll give you 2 reasons why. First of all, gold cards generally are just not as desirable or loved in Pokemon compared to SARs. And for this to be $124 so early on in the set's history, I mean, it just came out in November, and it was going for $200 at one point, which I thought was completely ridiculous. It's coming down slowly, as I hoped it would, but also I'll give you 2 examples of cards that definitely outshine this one. One is the one from Prismatic Evolutions. Because of the previous gold card was a very standard sort of style. The one from Prismatic Evolutions is very different. It takes this outlined approach. It uses rainbow colors and it has a 3-dimensional effect when you see it in person. I'll show you an eBay listing, for instance. Here, if we take a look at this card, we have this almost like pop-out effect that the Pikachu has, and it gives a really nice sort of 3-dimensional effect, which is unique, as opposed to this Pikachu, which is sort of the standard artwork that you always get. And I also find the crown to be a little intrusive and, kind of cramping on Pikachu's cuteness, if I'm being honest. I also wanted to mention from Vivid Voltage, which was a very early on Sword and Shield set, the number 1 card in this set is Pikachu VMAX, the Chunky Chew as it's called, $147. I'd say this is a better choice. If you're really looking for a big buy for your collection, this is a more unique one. There's no other chunky sort of VMAX rainbow Pikachu out there. There are already 2 hat-wearing, stellar / terrestrial Pikachu gold cards. This is really one of a kind. Comparatively, I'd say that the Pikachu is not that great an option from Surging Sparks. Next up, we have Milotic EX, and I think this is, as an individual standalone card, this is number 1 for me. It is considered the most beautiful Pokemon across all generations. That's how it's advertised, and it is quite lovely. There are some wonderful scenes with it throughout the series since it was introduced in Generation 4. $145. It is a steep price tag, but I do think it's still worth it as a card. Personally, for my collection, I will be getting the Japanese variant because it's far less expensive, but I really want this artwork, so that's another option for y'all to consider as well. If you really love the artwork, the Japanese is always there, so that's a great choice as well. For number 2, we have the Latias. I won't talk about this too much because literally the connected artwork to the Latios, and I was talking about how, together they create this beautiful duo and so forth. Like all the things I talked about for the Latios apply to the Latias, and this is $252. Even if you add the Latias and Latios together, they are significantly less expensive than the Sun and Moon variant that I was speaking about. And at the same time, you get a unique mechanic in terms of, when I say mechanic, I'm not talking about playing, but in terms of artwork style. and presentation style. So this is a unique mechanic to Scarlet and Violet. There are a lot of reasons why I think this is a unique addition to your collection with the Latios. Finally, for number 1, and this one might be a little bit this might spark some conversations in the chat, which I'm always happy to do. A few videos back when I was talking about the Mew, some people disagreed about my view on the Mew being overvalued and there being better options to choose from. That was my main point. But regardless, in this one, I'm going to say that the Pikachu is overvalued too. Why? Because $475, first of all, is ridiculous since November. It is consistent. That is a positive, that it's held this value over, a few months already. That's a positive sign, no doubt. But my point is not that this is not a good artwork, nor that it is a bad investment per se. It's more about, is it worth it for most people? The answer is no. It's $475. And I will show you right off the bat a bunch of alternative cards right now that I think are way better investments for many people. I'll go into Japanese. I'll show you 2 right now, Japanese cards, which are fairly expensive. And I'll show you a bunch of English ones that are literally a fraction of the value of this Pikachu. I think are as stunning artwork, are more affordable for your collection, and have potential for growth. So number 1, we have this Japanese Pikachu promo card with Mega Gengar and Mega Lucario with a Sylveon and a Pancham, one of the exploding Pikachus I've talked about so often on this channel. By the way, exploding Pikachu is just a term I coined. It's not an actual term, but it's what I use to describe Pikachus, which are front and center in the middle of the card, followed by Pokemon exploding left, right, and center around the Pikachu. And usually it's not a real background, it's some sort of canvas with colors splashed around, so this is fitting the bill in every sense. This goes for about $450 according to the eBay average. If we take a look at PSA 10 and 9, it's quite valuable. It's up there. If you can find a great copy and grade it, it's definitely worth it. Next up, we have a Sun and Moon promo Pikachu. Again, stamps on this one and the last one. Stamp cards, as y'all might realize, are going up a lot. I would say 150 is not too accurate, to be honest, because eBay doesn't have too many sales of this card as of late. This card is definitely far less expensive than that Surging Sparks Pikachu and has 2 legendaries, the 2 Sun and Moon legendaries, Solgaleo and Lunala in the background. Great artwork again. And for the last Japanese card, there is the Reds Pikachu. Very clean artwork. Very few people have really talked about it. It goes for $101. It was honestly at $80 between August and September, and it's only started to grow recently. It was higher and dropped down, so there is that fact. This is a great artwork again, and less than a fourth. For English, there are really just tons and tons of options. One is the Generations Pikachu. This comes in the Radiant Gallery or the Radiant Collection. So you can, in Generations packs, which was for the 20th anniversary, by the way, for y'all who don't know, you can basically pull something like a Mega Charizard in the back, and then you could pull this Pikachu in the front. If you take a look at the card, it's actually going for about $30. I will warn one thing though. If you do pick up sort of older cards, near mint is not really near mint. It's more like modern LP because of the fact that they're just so old, so hard to find such great condition cards. You will have light scuffing. That's just general sort of rule when it comes to buying that you might have to accept at that point. But if you can get this for $30, I mean, it just screams Pikachu. Another obvious choice, and I've mentioned this one so many times, the Crown Zenith one. If you feel like you're missing out on the texture from the Surging Sparks Pikachu, you got the Crown Zenith one right here, $17.86. Just to highlight this, I just want to show. So if we put in $17 and let's just go with $18 and then divide it by 475 and then times 100. It is literally worth 3%, if you want 4% of the value of the Surging Sparks Pikachu. That is how accessible this Crown Zenith card is. You get the texture. I'll actually show a quick clip as well of me holding this Pikachu, and what's really interesting is if you look at its eyes, it almost looks like they're balls of fire or light sort of emitting from them. Another great card is one of the Generations promos. This came in the collection boxes. There was a Charizard, Venusaur, Blastoise, and a Pikachu, sort of signifying all of the OG starters as part of the 20th anniversary. $111 for this card. If you can find a great copy, you're golden with a PSA 9 or 10. Great artwork. We have Jolteon Evolution, and we have Electabuzz in the background. Another card from Scarlet and Violet, actually. This is the Pokemon Center iteration of the ETB promo that you can pull. $109, amongst the more expensive ones, but worthy of the price tag, I'd say, because of its rarity, starters. Stamps are kind of going crazy right now. All of those factors together. If you're more into rainbows, and again, I showed that Chunky Chew before, but there's also a team-up tag team between Zekrom and Pikachu. And there's also an alt-art version of this promo, which is amazing as well. Final two, I'm just going to show these real quick. We have Lost Origin, the Trainer Gallery one, the Pikachu kicking the girl from Arceus Legends, the female character you can play. And if you like the Red and Pikachu sort of duo, then you also have the V and VMAX iterations of this card. I hope I illustrated one fact in this video. There's almost always another option out there. And if you take the time and find the right copy for older cards, you get more bang for your buck. To put it another way, instead of getting this Pikachu, you can get maybe 3 or 4 of the ones I displayed earlier. Instead of getting the Prismatic Evolutions Ceruledge, you can get the one from Surging Sparks. And bearing in mind that these cards do have potential for growth as well because they are iconic Pokemon or some of the factors that I've laid out earlier. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.